The unsolved mystery of the Russian hikers, or is it? In 1959, a group of hikers near Russia's Ural Mountains died under highly mysterious circumstances. To this day, it's considered one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the history of Russia. And in this video, we'll be going through the full story behind this mystery. This story begins on January 29, 1959, when a group consisting of 2 women and 7 men began their trekking journey across the infamous Dyatlov Pass. This Dyatlov Pass is a brutal region near the Ural Mountains in Russia, but it's also famed for its ski slopes, something the hikers wanted to try out for themselves. Their destination was the peak of Kholat Syakhl, otherwise known as the Dead Mountain. Most of the people in the expedition were young college students in their early 20s. The oldest, Alexander Zolotaryov, was 38, while the youngest, Yuri Krivonishenko, was 20. Everyone was going fine so far, aside from the fact that one of the original expedition members had to stay back because of chest pain. For now, the 9 trekkers were making their way to the mountain. 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, the man who led the expedition, was supposed to send a telegram to their sports club shortly after the group descended from the mountain on February 12, but that never ended up happening. For days, the sports club waited for a telegram, letter, or any other form of contact from the expedition to assure them that nothing went wrong, but there was nothing but silence. After a few days had passed, relatives became restless and worried, and they demanded the authorities to do a search operation to find the hikers. The search for the hikers officially began on February 20, and it included the members of the sports club, military, and local police. 6 days later, a volunteer searcher found the tent that the group was staying in. There was no one inside, and it contained pretty much all of the hikers' belongings, which suggested that the hikers might have been nearby. However, it even contained some vital stuff that the hikers needed to go outside, such as their shoes, coats, water, and more. The searchers later found footprints outside the tent, but these footprints were left by people who were barefoot. Keep in mind, it was freezing there. Eventually, the footprints faded away, but some of the searchers managed to find the remnants of a fire, and alongside it, they found 2 bodies. The 2 men were found wearing nothing aside from underwear, and there were also indications that they might have tried to climb a nearby tree for whatever reason. In the nearby area, the searchers would eventually find 3 more bodies that way, and they were all in a position that suggested they were crawling back to the camp. Finding the other 4 hikers took an additional 2 months, as they were all buried in the snow. 6 of the hikers had apparently died from hypothermia, which is expected when you consider how cold it was. However, 2 of the hikers died from severe chest trauma, and 1 of them died from a fatal skull injury. These types of injuries aren't really that common among avalanches, which was the leading theory at the time. Not only that, but the way everyone was dressed and positioned only raised more and more questions with time. They were found over a kilometer away from the camp at the very least, yet they were wearing almost nothing. Had it been an avalanche, they would have been inside the camp. Because of how vague everything was, a lot of theories started to be formed based on what people already knew about the incident. Some people suggested that they were attacked by some sort of animal or a mythic creature like a yeti. However, there were no bite or scratch marks found on any of the hikers' bodies. Another confusing part of the investigation was the skull injury that killed Nikolai Brignoles, one of the hikers. His skull had been subject to pressure that was equal to a car crashing on his head, but there were no other injuries anywhere else on his body. If it were an avalanche, he would have been crushed completely, and if it were an animal attack, he would have had way more signs of injuries, but nothing. It was only his skull. To add to that, the slope that the camp was on was 35 degrees, which would mean that an avalanche would be extremely weak or almost impossible there. The investigators also couldn't find any indications of people living nearby or being at the scene. The place was uninhabitable and completely deserted. There were also some levels of radiation found on the clothes of one of the hikers. The investigation was closed that year, but more than 60 years later in 2019, the investigation was reopened by the Russian government. This time, using modern science and technology, investigators tried to recreate what happened that day on their computers. The technology recreating the scene was possible thanks to the movie Frozen. A Disney movie had to create a hyper-realistic snow simulation for that movie. By 2021, after 2 years of simulations, the investigators concluded that the camp was set up on a thick layer of weak snow. When combined by extremely strong winds that occurred that day, it would cause something called a slab avalanche, a slow but strong form of an avalanche that can occur on gentle slopes like the one the tent was set up on. Since this avalanche was slow, it probably gave the hikers enough time to leave the tent, while not giving them enough time to put on their clothes or prepare themselves for anything else. This is also why some of the hikers probably tried to climb the tree, hid behind objects, and experienced strange injuries. Most avalanches are extremely quick and give you no time at all, but a slab avalanche is slow and rare enough for something this strange to actually happen. So, in many ways, this unsolved mystery has been solved, but many people around the world still don't buy the explanation. What do you think happened that day? Let us know in the comments below. That's a wrap for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more videos just like this. We'll see you on the next one.